All right, welcome. Francisco and Sam, we're gonna go ahead and transition to getting started here. How's it going today, Francisco? Welcome.
Doing well. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you so much for joining us. It is so greatly appreciated to be able to have an expert from DJI directly on our webinar. I know our attendees are gonna be very excited to hear a lot of the things we're gonna be talking about through our Tech Talk today.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Just gonna wait for Sam and then we'll get started for everybody here. Hey Sam, how's it going?
All right, good afternoon guys. How are you?
Going good.
Good. So all right, let's go ahead and let's get started. I think we have a good amount of people on here already that have registered, and I just want to go ahead and I want to welcome everybody that was there on last week's call that we had going on the unboxing of the M300 series, and welcome back. And for anybody else that's new, what we're going to do is we're going to provide a link afterwards as well to our original unboxing video if you guys want to watch that, where we do talk about a lot of what the drone comes with and a lot of the different features that it has. Today we're going to go a little bit more in depth. Like Desiree was saying, we have Francisco here with us. He's the lead enterprise rep over at DJI. Good to see you, Francisco.
Yep. Looking forward to getting a lot of good questions today.
Absolutely. And we got Desiree as well from last time. She's our marketing director, and she's also going to be fielding the questions with her team. So guys, as we're doing our presentation, as we're going through it, don't be scared to just pop questions in there as we're going. We're going to be answering them. We're going to have Q&A sessions as well, but if you see something there that hasn't been answered, just go ahead and ask the question. Just a little disclaimer, we are having some construction going on right now, so you might hear a couple things dropping in the background or a random person yelling, but it's just we have something going on with the roof, so the crew is out there working on it, but we'll work around it, and I'll go ahead and I'll mute myself a couple times if it gets too bad.
And also, Sam, I just want to remind everybody that this is a recorded webinar. We will be sending out a link directly to this session in case you're able, if you have to hop off early, or you just want to be able to have a refresher down the line or to be able to share it. So we'll have it posted up to YouTube shortly after our webinar concludes. And then we also want to let you guys know that after each section, we will address questions and answers. So we thought, again, because this is a tech talk, we wanted to be able to answer any questions that you have about a specific section right then and right there. So you will see a gray slide pop up when it's Q&A time. Just know that Q&A for that section is ready to go.
Yep, absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Let's go over the agenda that we're going to have, guys. We have a slide that's going to pop up right now. So we're going to obviously go over the M300 just a little bit again before we actually start diving into a lot more of the technical tips there. We're going to go over a lot of the key highlights, the platform itself, the remote controller, the camera systems, the software, a big feature which is going to be the SDK possibilities that are involved with it. And we're also going to cover what Enterprise Shield is. I know that it's kind of a newer system. It was something that came around with the Matrice 200 series, and it's something that a lot of people have questions on. But it's also a very major benefit for a lot of clientele. So we're going to cover that as well. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So just going over the product safety. Now, the Matrice 300 series itself, it does have a lot of redundant systems built into it. It's got the obstacle avoidance sensor built in 360 all the way around, so front, back, top, bottom, sides. And Francisco, if you could touch a little bit on that, what are some of the benefits and what are the main reasons why not only do we have the systems, but what are the systems and the sensors that are on this?
Right. So the drone is equipped with dual IMUs, dual barometers, and dual compasses. So because we have the dual of everything essentially, there are redundancies built in place. And the new obstacle avoidance sensors are actually customizable. So depending on the way that you're flying, you can customize it so that if you're in tight corridors, you could get closer to the walls, for example, without crashing. Or if you want to stay away from a wall, like at let's say 30 feet, you could do that as well. You could set all that up for the 6 sensors that are on the drone.
Awesome. Yeah, when I was actually out filming with the M300, and again, we have that video on YouTube, and we're going to be sending it with this link as well afterwards. One of the things I noticed was that the sensors themselves, they actually pick up pretty much everything that's there in front of them. We were doing a shot, and we were trying to get a shot where we were panning, and I was trying to get the drone a little bit closer to get some close-up shots, and it would not move at all towards the person that was there trying to capture the image. So that was really interesting, and I really liked the fact that it can even pinpoint down to like a silhouette of a person and stop right there and not move any closer. So I do like that safety feature. And going a little bit more in depth on the actual safety features themselves, I want to talk about security of the drones themselves, right? So I know that there's a lot of controversy right now with drones and data collection and security themselves. And we have the AES password protected system built into this, so that whatever you're filming, whatever you're capturing, it's not being shared, it's not able to get broken into. The same thing that's going on with the local data mode, being able to optimize US servers, being able to save data locally. Can you touch a little bit on that? Because I really want to pinpoint the fact that this is not accessible. This is not a drone that's easily to get into or to gain access to any of the information that's on here.
Yep, definitely. So we do have, we have talked about this previously on at the DJI website, but some of the things that you could do if you really want to have your data just to yourself, you could opt out of our services. So when you first get on you turn on your drone, right? And you go into the DJI Pilot app, there are like product services that you could just not select to be entered into, right? You could also, if you just get the drone at like firmware version 1, for example, and you don't want to update it, you don't have to update it, right? You can turn off your computer's, I'm sorry, not your computer, your controller's Wi-Fi as well, so that you don't get those notifications to update your drone, update your software. Again, same thing with the camera, you don't have to update it as well. So if that is a valid concern, we do have ways for you to simply use your drone without connecting to the internet. And because the application is the only thing that connects to the internet, by simply having your device's Wi-Fi turned off or in airplane mode, depending on which one you're using, you can mitigate that like that. We also have other software such as Flight Hub Enterprise Edition to help, so that if you do need to connect, for example, right, to live stream, you could do that with Flight Hub Enterprise Edition. And that does require kind of like a small IT team, so that they could help set it up, right? Because this runs off Linux. It's not something that's easily enabled by an end user. So they do have to have some IT background, but that is another option as well.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to be great for people that work in public safety. They work in police departments, fire departments, anybody that's really working in any kind of major inspection industry, especially when it goes down to actually showing a live video feed, a live view, back to a headquarters, back to a truck, back to, a bear crawler, whatever it is that they're using. That's something that would be a major benefit for them going into the Enterprise Flight Hub system. And I really like the way it's integrated with the Matrice 300 series. It's super easy to use and it's super easy to get into. But obviously we're going to dive into that a little bit more as we continue to move on.
Yep, that's right.
All right, so let's talk about some of the key highlights that the drone has. Some of the main features of the drone itself. Last time we talked about the TB60 batteries. I do want to go ahead. I want to address a question. So somebody asked in the previous video, can you take these on an airplane? And the answer is no. These are 256 watt hours. They're over the airline standard. So you have to keep that in mind. You have to work around that when you're traveling with this drone. But for all the local people that are just going to be throwing this in the back of a truck, first responders putting it in the back of a PD cruiser or anything like that, you don't have to worry about that issue itself. But I do want to go over the fact that, so we have the flight times here. We do see the fact that you're able to put up to 3 camera systems on this drone itself. And Francisco, a question I'd gotten last time was, can I put 3 H20Ts on the drone itself?
Gotcha. So that is not a supported configuration.
Mhm.
As far as I know, I haven't heard of anyone needing something like that.
Right.
So yeah, that's not possible at this time.
Okay. And another thing I wanted to ask you as well, going over the fact that you have the XT2, you can put the Z30, you can put the H20Ts on here. I really like the fact that everything gets kind of, I want to say broken down, but really just like pieced together into one massive camera. It's not that much bigger than a Z30, the H20Ts. And the fact that you have 3 different camera systems built into one is absolutely amazing. And I really love the fact that it was designed and made specifically for this drone system itself. And another great thing that's coming with the 300 series is going to be the actual Enterprise Smart Controller. Now, one of the key things, and we have it up there on the screen, is the fact that you're able to get 13 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken, or 15 kilometers, which is 9.3 miles. You're able to get a full HD video back. But there's a really big feature that's on this, and the only reason you're able to achieve the distance that you're able to actually get with the smart controller is because of the triple video channel. Can you go into that a little bit, Francisco?
Yeah, so the triple video channel is something that we've improved on. So we've increased the bandwidth to 80 megabytes per second. So that allows for the live streaming of 3 video channels. So the way that works is the controller will only be able to receive up to 2 at one time. So we can stream 3, but the user will have to choose between, let's say, camera A, let's say, like the XT2, for example,
Okay.
and the FPV camera. Right, whereas the second operator can select let's say an XT2 and a Z30. So that's how that kind of works.
Very nice. Okay, yeah, that's very vital information because again, the fact that you're able to use a dual operation setup on the M300 series is massive, right? And the fact that you can actually go into the different camera settings in the series themselves, anything that you're doing, especially when it comes down to inspection or even with search and rescue, trying to cover a massive area to find somebody, having 2 officers out there that can be pretty spread apart, and just keeping that strong connection bouncing back and forth between the remote and the drones, it really helps when you fall into those kind of scenarios.
Definitely.
So I want to go a little bit more now into the actual systems themselves. So Des, if you can go over to the next slide. So we have the capacities here. We have the weights themselves. We can see the actual takeoff weight, which is close to about 20 pounds. So it's a pretty heavy guy up in the air. The payload capacity, we're looking at about 6 pounds. And, Francisco, when we talk about payload capacity, is this if we wanted to add any additional systems on here, if we wanted to do something with like, one of the SDK systems where we could do something like an export with a different camera, with a special setup, can you touch a little bit on that?
Right. So the payload capacity is what we've tested with right, for the max takeoff weight. And we do have like a flight time listed online for that when you're flying at that max takeoff weight. So in general, you can add a different payload SDK. You can add a different payload. So I'm seeing some of the questions here, and some people are asking, can a battery power a third-party payload SDK? And yes, it can. There's the USB port through the M300 RTK. There's voltage and amperage available for that third-party payload. So that's something that definitely can be used.
Absolutely, yeah. And Des, if we can just go back to the powerful system slide. Someone's jumping a little too far.
Sorry, yeah, it's not me, I swear. Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
No problem. So yeah, going back to the powerful systems that you can rely on, we do have the triple gimbal payload support that's on here as well. I think one of the flight times I saw on there was about 15 minutes if you're running 3 different systems at the same time. Now, something I want to ask, and I know it's eventually going to come up now, it's when you're setting these systems up, is it specific to where you can put the cameras? Can you put the H20 in port 1, port 2, port 3 up on the top? what's the camera configuration that you can work with if you were to use all three systems at once?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Right now, the payload configuration is like this. So the upward gimbal, which would be the third gimbal port, right? That would only support payload SDK options. Okay. And then the configurations for gimbal ports 1 and 2, they would vary. So in general, the XT2 would only be supported in gimbal port 1. And then we have, in gimbal port 2, we have the Z30, H20, and H20T would also be supported. Sorry, I mixed that up. So H20T would only be on gimbal port 1. It can get confusing. I have some listed. We have it listed on the manual, but in general, your DJI payloads would be supported on gimbal port 1 and 2.
Right.
And then if you have like an H20T, you could put a payload SDK in gimbal port 2. And the payload SDK would be in general in gimbal port 2 and 3.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. And again, we kind of touched a little bit on, the different visual sensors that we have around us. You did mention that you can turn them on, you can turn them off. You can set the distance that you want them to be effective with, and a big thing I want to talk about is also the lighting system. One of the questions we got on our last webinar that we did was, can you turn the lights fully off?
Right. So I think they're referring to the front and the back, right? So we have something called discrete mode from the M200 series. So you can turn all the lights off. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So that transferred over from the 200 to the 300.
Exactly.
Perfect. Absolutely. All right. So let's go to some of the questions. Des, do we have any questions on the platform? You are on mute.
Trying to keep background noises down. So I'm going to just kind of rapid fire with some of the questions that we're getting live, as well as questions that were actually submitted after our last webinar. So we have a few questions. Let's start with the slots that are actually on the top of the drone for ventilation. How is that protected from water? Would it be positive pressure in the case that the drone is not, protected when it's not powered on? Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, so you don't have to have the drone powered on to get the IP45 rating, right? So even when it's off, it is protected from water. There's like an external pass-through so that the ventilation isn't near any critical components.
Okay, good to know. And regarding the RTK, does the RTK have NTRIP?
Right, so this drone, it does support NTRIP. Similar to the Phantom 4 RTK, you can upload your information through the application.
And would that be directly on the remote controller?
Yes.
Perfect, great. How stable is the drone in stronger winds? It's a question that we always get whenever we have a new drone. We know what we say it can hold, but let's talk a little bit more about the wind conditions and what you guys have tested and what you've found helpful and useful.
Right, so we do have a maximum wind rating of around 33 miles per hour. I have to double check the conversion, but it's like around 33, 35 miles per hour. And just so you guys know, like in the making of that, the M300 video shoot, right? Like this drone is not a cinema drone. We have the Inspire 2 for that, right? So it was a very windy day, and we had like M300 here. The Inspire 2 was here, and due to the wind, like this is the Inspire 2, right? It's like this on a very, very windy day. So I would say, that kind of goes to show you how stable this platform is.
Okay, definitely good to know.
And I'll also touch on that real quick too. So when we were flying and doing our video, we were getting up to about 32 mile per hour gusts because we were filming right by the water. As you guys will see in the video that we send out, it's right next to a drawbridge. So we were getting 29 to 35 mile per hour gusts just randomly happening, and the drone did perfect. Even the person I was filming with, he did comment on the fact that it did not move at all. Like it sat in one position. I didn't get the warning that always will pop up on some of the DJI drones saying, wind velocity, fly with caution, strong velocity. So none of those errors popped up at all. So it does actually very well in the wind.
Good to know. Very good to know. All right. And then we also have another question. Does the M300 have I/O ports in some form similar to the rear of the M200?
Yeah. So the M300 does not have I/O ports. that is something that we have been receiving questions on specifically from like public safety. So I think, from my knowledge, we will find a workaround. There's going to be an onboard SDK device that would provide power out. So I can follow up at a later time with drone nerds to provide a more thorough answer.
All right, I'll make a note of that. Thank you so much. So we have a situational question. This is from Roberto. So they are currently utilizing a payload that can stream data to the ground. Usually they use a long-range Wi-Fi, but for BVLOS, will they need a longer range radio streaming capability? And is it possible to use your video connection radio link to stream other data?
Gotcha. So for the range, the second operator, sorry, was that for a second operator? So the range for the drone in general is, as we mentioned before, 9.3 miles. So the second controller is connected directly to the drone, right? So that's under ideal conditions, 9.3 miles. For the second question was asking if they could live stream.
Is it possible to use the video connection radio link to stream other data?
To stream, oh yeah. So that's what the payload SDK would do, right? So you can stream other information like what's the methane levels here, right? Let's say we're talking about the methane gas detector. So yeah, you can stream other pieces of information through the link.
Okay, great. And we want to talk about another situational question. Let's talk about loss of motor. It's something that can happen out in the field. We want to address that. So what's the data, what's that information regarding loss of motor and the reliability of this drone's motors when you actually lose power of the aircraft?
Gotcha. So in terms of reliability, I don't have the exact flight hours available at this time, but this drone is equipped with more advanced flight controllers. So if a motor does go off, it dies off mid-flight for whatever reason, this is designed to be controllable in like an uncontrollable. It looks like it's not controlled, right? But you can safely land this if a motor does go off. And we will release a video at a later time to demonstrate this.
Okay, fair question. Let's talk about mapping. So I know I've gotten a lot of questions. So for all of you that have already pinged in about this, is there any mapping RTK capabilities with the M300 as it stands here and today?
Yep. So because this does have the integrated RTK system, similar to the Phantom 4 RTK, you do get all of the same benefits in terms of time sync, right? And I know the next question is probably going to be about using this camera for mapping.
Yes.
And you can, but just know that this payload was not designed for mapping, right? So, if we compare it to the Phantom 4 RTK, for example, those lenses, they're measured for differences in lenses, so you can correct it later in post. Whereas this one is not, right? And so, there's a lot of subtle things for mapping that I would not recommend this drone for. I would recommend the Phantom 4 RTK in that case if you're serious about surveying and mapping. Yeah.
All right, perfect. A few more questions will get answered here and then we can continue. So talking about dual IMUs, are they wired in this series or are they completely separate?
Okay, I would have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure we can share that information, but I will certainly
take a note.
Yep.
And while you're taking that note, we also have a couple of inquiries as far as, are you, hold on, let me just clarify. We have a couple duplicates. Has the FAA actually approved BVLOS for the Matrice 300 series?
FAA approves BVLOS. So from my understanding, the FAA, so the way that BVLOS works, you would have to submit your operations and the drone that you would be using, right? And from my understanding, we don't have access to the data of which drones and which operators have been approved by the FAA. Yeah, and I know, for example, DJI, we don't have a BB loss waiver. So, you know, if you see that a test was done at like 9.3 miles to test the range, that was not done in the US, right? So we don't have access to that type of information. And in general, from what I know, the M300 hasn't been approved for BB from the FAA.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's talk about the future. So are there any plans, or will there be in the future, for DJI to actually integrate other payloads to the M300 series? You know, we always want to know that question. That's always in the back of everybody's mind. What's next?
Right. So there's several manufacturers that we're working with for the payload SDK. Okay. Unfortunately, they're still being approved for the North American market. They're going through some certifications. So, on my end, I don't have any information on which ones will be available in the US. So, as time goes on, we should hear more about that.
And I'm sure Drone Nerds will be one of the first to know about that. So whenever we know, you guys will know, and I'm sure we'll be doing a webinar about it. I'm sure of that. Can you also answer, Carlos is asking, is the DJI Manifold 2 compatible with the M300 series?
Yep, that's a good question. So yeah, the DJI Manifold 2 is compatible. There will be, there's going to be something else that needs to be purchased. I don't have it right now with me, but I can follow up with you later. But yeah, in general, the DJI Manifold 2 will be compatible with the M300.
Okay. And one last question from Paul. How is the telemetry transmitted and actually stored on the M300 series?
Sure. I'm sorry, how is the what?
Paul Herrera is asking, how is the telemetry transmitted and stored? Is the data going to be integrated with the video or stored in a separate file?
When they say file, are they referring to like the flight logs or?
Paul, if you are still on with us, please feel free to chime in back to the Q&A section just to clarify your question. And then.
Okay, I see. So I think they're referring to the video files. So the video files won't have any telemetry information. You can get a simple like timestamp, but yeah, that's usually the most that we can offer. Okay. Yeah.
No worries. All right. So Sam, I'm going to hand it back over to you so we can dive a little bit deeper.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And just one more thing before we go over to the next slide, a question that was actually asked on the last webinar that we did. One of the customers wanted to know, using the DRTK2 base station, now this drone is rated for, roughly about 9.3 miles, working in perfect conditions. But, we're going to talk about this topic next, but using the dual remote controller setup, more or less, what's the range that the RTK system itself can get when you're actually utilizing it?
Yeah, so with the M300, if you're using the TRTK2, under ideal conditions, you should be getting around 12 kilometers range or 7.4 miles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Yeah. So let's dive into the smart controller a little bit. We're going to go over some of the systems that are here. Right off the bat, I do want to address the fact that somebody asked last time, what was the actual display? Was it similar to a high brightness or an ultra bright? And we have the answer right there for you. It is the ultra bright display on a 5.5 inch. And again, when I was using this, when I was doing the filming and we were making the videos that we were doing, it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon here in Florida, super clear day, not a cloud in the sky. And I was able to see everything on the remote controller itself with no issues whatsoever. Again, you do get the HD display feedback on there. You have the HDMI port, which we showed in the last video. It's going to be located right up on the top. And that's HDMI out. It's not going to be a receiver. It only sends it out. And then, I want to go a little bit more in depth. Here it does talk about supporting third-party apps. Now, I know that the Crystal Skies themselves didn't really fully support third-party applications. What can be integrated with the Smart Controller series?
Right. So, we will have a device at a later point for sale that can support third-party devices.
Mhm.
You know, so if you wanted to let's say have like use your Pix4D application, you know, that's something that is supported at launch, and I believe the developers would begin development with the new mobile SDK that we just released.
Okay.
So yeah, that's something that you could use potentially in the future. And in terms of what applications you can use on the Crystal Sky,
Mhm.
because it's not as, you know, we've improved the Android device that's in the Crystal Sky, right? So if you want to develop on Android, you can, but from my understanding, you would have to sideload the application into the device.
Yes, yeah, definitely worked with a lot of people on that, getting them to sideload on there. So that's good. I'm glad that that's something that's definitely going to be utilized on the enterprise smart controller, because that's massive. And you know, a lot of people they do have subscriptions and things like that, especially when it comes to search and rescue or mapping or anything like that. You know, they usually will have a subscription series with Pix4D, Drone Deploy, something like that as well. Um, you
And I have
know,
another question. I was going to say, Sam, that actually just answered another question that just pinged into Q&A. And as a follow-up, people are wanting to also confirm, are they able to utilize the battery power from the controller to power a third-party payload? I'm sorry, from the drone to power a third-party payload?
That's a good question. Let me find out, because I know that the USB port, there is a power out.
Okay.
Yeah, let me get back to you on that one.
yeah, and I think we addressed that one a little bit earlier. I think we said that it is doable with the system. But yeah, we'll confirm it again for
Yeah,
sure.
that was for the M300's payload SDK. So through the SDK it can. But yeah, let me find out for you.
And also,
And finally, there is a micro SD card slot on the smart controller series itself. You know, Francisco, if you can talk about what's actually being stored on the smart controller, and you know, why would I utilize the SD card slot that's there?
Right. So if you're taking any pictures or videos, you can save it into your smart controller if you'd like to. You can also do screen recordings or screen captures with the smart controller. So the SD card there is to like offload data if you needed to.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's
awesome. And that's great, because I know that when I was using the system itself, you know, something that I realized there is that, you know, when you're looking at the actual thermal feed from the H20T, you do get the radiometric data there. So taking a quick screenshot and just saving it right there onto the SD card to later just, you know, pass off to the guy that has to go run it to the next department to process some of the data or just review it in real time. It's a much smoother process doing something like that.
mm-hmm.
So let's go over to the next ones. We're going to talk about the advanced dual controls. So kind of looking over this, you know, we did talk about in our previous webinar the fact that there is a section where now you can have operator in trainer mode. Can you talk a little bit about operator and trainer mode?
Yeah. So with the new controllers, what we have set up is we have it set up so that at any point the secondary controller or the main controller can overtake control of the drone's controller inputs, right? So you have access to like flying the drone, and you have access to the gimbal. So in that mode, if you wanted to, like, let's say I was training you, right? And you're flying around and I wanted you to stop, I could simply just touch that button and like just stop the drone, right? Because now I have control of it. So that's the way that works.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing, especially, you know, I mentioned in the previous webinar, you know, you have police departments or anybody that's really training on site, and you have the new guy, right, that you're giving him the remote controller to an M300. Sorry about that. You know, you're giving him the remote to an M300 series, and you've got $30,000 flying in the air. You want to be able to overtake that if anything happens or if he gets nervous or anything like that.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So something else we're going to mention here too is the fact that you can take off from point A and land on point B. Can you talk a little bit about that? How you're able to actually just take off from a certain area? You know, are you able to reset the return to home? Can you have the return to home moving like you could on some of the other drones that you guys have available?
Right. So I think for this application, okay, so this is for the advanced dual control. So the way that this works is because the controllers now, in the past, they were connected through what we call like a master and slave system, right? The secondary controller would be connected to the main controller, which would be then connected to the drone. But with this new advanced dual control, we have both the secondary and the primary controller connected directly to the drone. So if, let's say, we're inspecting a very, very long bridge, the first pilot could fly like halfway through the bridge, and then the second pilot can overtake and take control of the drone and fly the rest of the bridge, right? So that's what we're saying when we say, now you could take off from different locations, or land at different locations, sorry. And yeah, so this is something, especially like another application for public safety. They could use this for live streaming. So the main controller can be flying the drone, and the secondary controller can be in at their command station, live streaming everything to the leaders.
Awesome. I mean, that's huge, especially when it comes down to inspections, doing line inspections, anything like that. I mean, you've got this camera on here, and you have miles of line to inspect and different things like that. So easily just moving your crew along as they go, and just keeping that connection, having a really strong amount of flight time there, that's a huge setup, especially for the M300 series. That's a really massive benefit for it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and so if we go over to the actual snapshot that we have on here, Desiree. All right, so that kind of gives you a little bit of a visual of what we're talking about. And if we go over to the next slide, I believe do we have a video in here as well, Des? No. Okay.
Here in a moment. Just.
So yeah, this video is about the obstacle avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
So here I kind of show you what I have set for the horizontal and vertical.
Okay.
So I just kind of wanted to explain what you're seeing on the primary flight displays on the bottom. You can see a little circle around the triangle, and that circle represents around 55 feet, right? So everywhere in that circle to the very end is up from 0 to 55 feet. And so the drone will detect things up to that range and more, actually, because if you look at the outer circle, there's a little green line. So the horizontal range is around 130 feet in general, but that little bubble only has a range of 52 feet. But if you look at the horizontal braking distance, that's like the stopping distance, right? So I have it set to 3.3 feet. So at that distance, it's going to stop 3.3 feet away from the wall, right? And then we have the warning distance. So that'll be when let's just say if we're talking from 0 to 10 meters, right? The warning distance would be at 10 meters, and anything in between your warning and your stopping distance would be yellow. So as you can see here, it's green because I'm not within that distance. Let me see, what did I put for the, can you go back a little bit? I'm trying to see the warning distance.
That's when it starts to happen.
So anyway, the warning distance at that point, it would turn yellow, right?
Okay.
So I just kind of wanted to explain what the UI was displaying.
Sure.
Trying to get there for you.
Yeah. So if anyone has any questions on this, they could please let me know, and I can further elaborate.
Sure. And actually, that just brings us right back over to our next session, which is the Q&A session on the remote controller. So Desiree, are there any questions or anything like that we have?
100%. And if you give me 1 second, my screen froze. So it looks like right now we're also looking for, with operator mode, can you actually, so this is, can you fly it? This is just going back 9 miles from where someone else can take control, and then from their controller, continue to push the limits of that 9-mile distance. Is there a way to kind of trick the system?
Yeah, so you don't have to trick the system per se, because the controller is connected to the drone. So yeah, in theory, you could definitely do that. That's the range between the controller and the drone. So that includes the primary controller and then the secondary controller.
Great. And for the feature of high-res grid photo on the H20 and the H20T, how many pictures does it actually take with that zoom camera? I know that's a Zenmuse question, but.
Yeah, so it really depends on the user. So, you know, it's utilizing the wide camera. So with the wide camera, you're seeing the whole image, right? And then it's utilizing the zoom for zooming in and taking pictures. So you can actually set how many pictures you want to take, right? So at the standard 5x zoom, it's around 3 to 4, depending on your area that you select, because it's all user customizable. So you can select, you know, let's say a rectangle or not a triangle, or a square, for example, right? So you select the area and then you select how much zoom you want. So you can get like 2 squares or like, you know, 20 squares. It depends on you.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's one of the features that we actually showcased in the video that we made. That exact setting and that exact option. You know, where we're actually toggling between a zoom and between the thermal, selecting how much of a zoom we actually want to have in there, and then actually toggling between the amount of bursts and the photos that we want to have available as well. So we do have that in our video as well that we're gonna be sharing at the end of this webinar. Absolutely.
Perfect. And also regarding the DJI goggles and the HDMI out, would that be a wireless transmission, and is the M300 compatible with that series?
DJI goggles. So as far as we know, we're not making any compatibility with the DJI goggles in terms of wireless transmissions.
Okay.
I believe that I don't remember which DJI goggles. There's one that supports an HDMI in. So if you wanted to, you could do that, right, from the HDMI out of the smart controller to the HDMI in of the goggles.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's the racing edition that has that feature.
Correct. And another question regarding the controller: does it have ADS-B in and out capabilities?
So the drone is equipped with ADS-B in.
Okay.
That's to let the user know, you know, where there are helicopters or other airplanes that have ADS-B out. So there is no ADS-B out from the drone.
And it also picks up other drones as well that are in the area. Yeah, and that's just to clarify. I think we mentioned that in the last webinar, and it's one of the mistakes we made in our video, saying that it does ADS-B out. What I meant to say, and you know, we'll clarify it again here, is that it has ADS-B in. It's receiving all the data that's being sent out by the other systems around it. And I try to showcase that in the video as well, where we do actually get a couple airplanes flying around us, you know, very high above us. But still, we get a notification that there is an aircraft in the area. And it will pop up on the top left-hand side.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, that clears out our Q&A.
Okay, sure. So let's go over to the camera series. So I want to dive into the H20 camera series a little bit more. Des, if you can go over to that slide where we start, you know, talking about the cameras. And I really want to be able to show it on there, because that's going to be something that's really the biggest change here for the 300 series itself, you know. And as you guys can see here on my screen, I have the H20T here. You know, we still have it here in house. I think we have it for a couple more weeks, so we're going to definitely be making more videos with it. But you know, pictured there, we have the H20 series, if I'm not mistaken, or the 20T.
H20. This is the 20T image that you're seeing on the right.
Right. So we have the 20T. You know, it's something that I really like about the fact that this camera has is a 20 megapixel zoom. Now, I did change some of the specs on here because it does have a 23 time optical and a 200 time digital. So keep that in mind. You know, you do have a very high resolution camera system that's being able to zoom in very well. And we showcase that in our video. And we do show a 200 times zoom, exactly what that looks like. And the definition is phenomenal on that. It's kind of mind-blowing when you look at it. But can you go a little bit more in depth and talk about the night scene that's built into this as well?
Yeah. So similar to the Z30, we had the IR cut mode, right? So using the zoom camera that's on the H20T and H20 series, we have a filter. You can disable the IR filter so that you're getting a different wavelength on the sensor. So again, similar to the Z30, you're getting, it's usually from 700 to 1,000 nanometers wavelength to be able to see better in the dark. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's great because one of the questions I've gotten from one of the police officers that we work with was, does it still keep that feature from the Z30? And I'm really glad that it actually moved over to the H20T series itself as well, because they use canines in the field and they have special markers on them to be able to see them when they're working. So it's great that that's still integrated here with the 20T series as well. And again, when we're looking at this, and keep in mind there's 3 sensors plus the laser sensor that's built into this as well. So we have the zoom camera that we've talked about here. I want to kind of go into the thermal camera now. Now, is it safe to say that this thermal camera series is very similar to a FLIR XT2?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say in terms of resolution, yep, definitely similar.
Perfect. Yeah. Now I know it's not an actual FLIR sensor that's built in here. I know it's something that's been proprietary for DJI to work on the H20T series. But I do like the fact that it's integrated here. It's the same 30 hertz. It's the same high resolution, and it's a 13.5 millimeter lens. One of the questions that we'd received prior was, will these lenses be interchangeable as well? What's your feedback on that?
Yeah. So as of right now, it's just a 13.5 millimeter lens.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. From what I know, we don't have any other lenses planned. So it's just this one.
Okay. And this does keep an 8x zoom as well.
Yes, that's right. Digital 8x zoom.
Yes.
And is this thermal camera also allowed in all countries? It's something that we have a lot of people watching from all over. Is this particular thermal camera available everywhere and allowed to be utilized?
Yeah. Yep. So from my understanding, it's allowed in STA and in non-STA countries.
All right. Let me see here. So let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about the laser rangefinder. Now, what's the process behind actually having this integrated to a camera? Why was this put into it?
Right. So we found that in public safety, it was useful to have like a point, or this was a pretty large request to have like not only the drone was able to track something, but also to be able to display where it is in the map, right? Or maybe they needed to know how far something was. So that's what this is for. So you can measure the distance and also get a GPS coordinate of where that item might be.
Absolutely, yeah, that's huge, and it's something that we're going to talk about in the next couple slides here. Some of the newer features that are built into this, which they're going to be huge for public safety and for inspections as well. And again, I like the fact that you have a good amount of range here built into this, and something I want to kind of touch on as we're going over this camera system. And Francisco did mention this earlier. And we mentioned in the last webinar, the XT2, the Z30, H20, and H20T. Right now, sorry for the noise. Right now, that's going to be the only compatible payload systems for the M300 series. The X7 doesn't have any plans right now to be added onto this platform. Francisco, maybe I can pull your leg. You can tell me if something new is going to be coming out to replace the X7 for the M300 series.
As far as I know, there isn't going to be a replacement. But yeah, the reason why the X7 isn't supported on this, because I'm sure you're going to get a lot of questions about this.
They are.
Yeah, it's because the image processor was, the X7 does not have an image processor, right? It usually had it on the drone. So that's the reason why on the M200 series, only the first gimbal port supported that, was because that's where that image processor was. But for these, it was completely removed. So on the M300 series, you're not going to have a micro SD card on the drone. It's all on the payload. So the payload is doing all of the processing, which is why for the Z30, that's supported, right? H20, H20T. So that's why these cameras are supported.
Right. And another feature that the thermal cameras have from FLIR is MSX, right? So is that something that's built into the H20T series as well?
Right. So MSX is, from my understanding, that's one of FLIR's IP, intellectual property. So this would not be coming to the H20 series or H20T series.
Okay, no problem.
I have a question on sorry, just another quick question from Dean on the LRF. Is the laser rangefinder output in the SDK?
Let me get back to you on that. Yeah.
No problem. And then, one other thing I want to mention here too, these are all electronic shutter, right? There's no mechanical shutters built into these H20 series cameras.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So just something to keep in mind. And Des, I think our next slide is the Q&A session. So are there any other questions that we're getting on the camera series?
Nope. You know what I would say is if we could talk from a comparability standpoint without talking about price. I get it, guys. I probably had 15 people chime in like, what is the price of our H20 series? We're not going to talk about price today, but maybe we can give them a comparable purchase from a past product.
Sure. I mean, looking at this actual system itself, keep in mind, you're getting 3 cameras in one, right? So price-wise, you're actually coming in at a better price point than you would be if you were to just buy one thermal camera by itself, let's say. And you're actually getting 3 cameras in one plus the laser rangefinder. So the M300 series actually comes in at a very good price point, and we're going to have our contact information there at the end. So, just keep in mind to watch out for that. And, we're going to cover it a little bit more in depth here as well, going more into the series. But something I do want to talk about, Francisco, and I think we touched on in the last webinar, but I want to make sure we really get it pinpointed here. So the M300 series itself is IP45 rated, while the camera series are IP44.
Yes, that's right. That is correct. So yeah, at one point they were equally rated, but after further testing, we determined it was 45. Yeah.
Sure. And can you give us, for anybody that doesn't know the IP rating standards, can you tell us a little bit more about why that's important and why it's being mentioned on here?
Yeah, that's right. So the reason that this is important is that we found that a lot of our users, they might be involved with emergency situations where a light rain might be occurring at the time, but they would still need to fly, right? So that's the reason why our new gimbals and our new drones would be IP rated. So there's been a lot of tests under laboratory environments that we've been doing with the M300 series. Kind of like splashing it with water like for 24 hours straight. So and that includes with the motors being turned on. So that's something that we do take seriously, and that's why the new drone has been it's been improved significantly actually for this case. So now the ESCs are no longer outside near the motors. They're all inside of the main body of the drone. So yeah, that's been significantly improved.
Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and let's talk about some of the safety and the reliability. This is kind of where the IP rating standards come into play, and we just did cover that exact topic. But looking a little bit more into it, I like the fact that this drone does come with a really rugged case. I like the way it's packaged. I like the fact that DJI put a lot of thought into that, because the M200 series, it came with a good case, with the twisting locks and the wheels that are on there, but the 300 series definitely feels more rugged, and it feels like it's ready to actually go into the field. When we were out filming, I like the fact that I was going through like this dirt path full of rocks and trees and branches and all this stuff, that it wasn't like a burden to drag the case behind me. It just flowed smoothly. It's kind of like having luggage, but like you said there, this thing has endured 24-hour testing with everything turned on. So I think that's really incredible. It's going to be a massive thing, especially when it comes for public safety and for inspections as well. So let's go into the next slide. I want to talk about the INGRESS protection. Sorry about that. All right. So this is something that I really liked looking into the M300 series, and it kind of caught me off guard because when I was setting the whole system up, as soon as I looked into the UAV health system, I was like, man, what is this little status here on the right-hand side? So I clicked into it, and unless you've been in the drone industry or you've been around M200s for a while, or any kind of drone really that works with DJI, you don't really understand what the lights are, right? Like you turn the drone on, you're ready to fly, and all of a sudden it says error, And sometimes it'll tell you, hey, it's the IMU. Hey, sometimes, you know, you need to do a calibration, or you're in a no-fly zone or anything like that. But sometimes you might get an error. You're not really sure what it is. You know, so can you really go in depth on the health management system that's built in for the M300?
Yeah. So the new health management system, it's something that, you know, we've been working on for a while, and this is to help monitor all of these subcomponents of your drone. So you know, if you ever get any error messages or notifications in the DJI Pilot app, in the main camera view now, we have a new icon where you can check what you got, because in the past you would get a message and it would just go away, right? And you're like, oh, what was that? So we have implemented that. And then in the HMS, you can go back and look at all of your errors that you've ever received to determine what happened, right? So that's part of HMS. There is a new flight data management page in there as well. So if you wanted to, let's say you're having an error, right? Like, let's say you're having an ESC issue. First of all, the HMS page has comprehensive documentation on what are some of the steps that the user can do, right? That whether it's like, let's say you have a visual sensor error, you can go into the HMS system and then check the notification, check the some of the things that you could do. So it'll tell you like, oh, if you're getting this error, please try calibrating your sensors, right? Make sure they're clean, make sure that there's nothing on there. So this is part of like the maintenance guide that, you know, this works in conjunction with the maintenance guide that we've released for the M300 series. So yeah, so there's that portion of helping you troubleshoot your drone in case there's any issues. And then furthermore, if you do have issues that you cannot resolve, you can upload your flight logs so that, you know, someone from our after sales team, an engineer, can take a look and help you determine what is happening, right? So this can be done from the controller, by the way. You don't have to connect your drone to the DJI assistant to do this, which was some in the past.
And that's massive. You know, I like the fact that you can actually just go ahead and just share the data immediately, you know, especially if you run into any problems or any concerns in the field and you need to get something resolved right away, or you need to have somebody follow up with you, you know, about that exact problem that just occurred. You know, I like the fact that you're able to upload that and just get it right there in real time.
Yeah.
And then, so Des, if we can go over to the next slide. So the next thing I want to kind of talk about, and we touched on this as well, but if you can go into the dual control, you know, we did talk about the fact that both operators are able to actually use the remote controllers themselves, but, you know, from implementing the system on the Enterprise Smart Controller, you know, has your team actually seen case studies or anything like that where that's something that's benefited the people that have been using it?
Right. So in terms of case studies, we don't have any at the moment, but we did have, we worked with some of our external beta testers to get their feedback on this advanced control. And quite frankly, a lot of them were, actually all of them were very happy about it. It's very easy and simple to use. I can give you an example. So we had one of our external utility users. They were flying a drone, right? They wanted to see if they could have pilot B be like a mile away from pilot A, right? So they would go inspect all of the power lines, and then once pilot B had the video downlink, once the drone was in range, they would communicate with pilot A like, hey, I'm going to take over now, take over the drone, and then continue flying, right? So there's that aspect of taking control of the drone. There's also another aspect where the second operator can control the gimbal, only the gimbal, right? And the first operator is just flying the drone. And then the final one is where the main operator, the main person that's flying the drone, can lock the drone, right? So no one else can take it, just he's flying, right? And if he wanted to allow the second person to fly, they would communicate amongst each other. He would open up the portal to allow the second operator to take control.
Right.
So, you know, that's the flexibility of this new advanced dual control system that we have.
Yeah. Good. I like the fact that you can actually lock them up, and, you know, if you wanted to have somebody that's flying without actually having to actually jump over to the next communication, that they can control that and communicate internally. on when they're going to take control, how to finish the mission, how to get the plan done before the next person takes over and continues flying with the drone. So that's phenomenal, you know, and it kind of just jumps over into the next thing I want to cover with you is, you know, a lot of the advanced intelligence systems that have been built into this, you know, and this is more diving into the actual the application itself and the actual use case for the drone. You know, we have pinpoint, we have smart track, we have location sharing, you know, and I do know that the new AI technology was built in with the M300 and the H20 series. So if we can go ahead and just kind of go and cover a little bit of that as well. So Des, if you can go over to the next slide, please. Let's cover something on pinpoints.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a video, but in here you can see the there's a diamond shape, green like diamond shape icon right there. Oh yeah, here we go. Video is a little bit laggy, but here you can see that they've pinpointed an area underneath. So so now for this new feature, you can pinpoint things like that, and it'll stay on the user interface so that you know where that is at all times. And you can even have it in the in this user interface on the bottom where the obstacle avoidance was. It'll also show you the direction that that item may be in. So, you know, yeah. So right now, this can only one pinpoint at a time can be set up, but we're hoping to expand this. But as of right now, it's just one.
Okay. All right, and that'll just be as soon as that's updated, that'll just come with a firmware update.
That's right.
Okay.
And Sam, I know you definitely leveraged this when you were flying and testing it out. Can you tell us a little bit more about Pinpoint for people that don't really understand the capabilities and full functional capabilities that it has?
Sure. So, you know, something I liked when I was flying the drone itself, I actually did use the Pinpoint system, and you can see it in there. We started the drone off. We didn't really do too far of a track on it, but when I did pinpoint into a location, the drone actually shifted to a better direction to be able to get a clearer shot of the bridge system that we inspected. You know, and I did the pinpoint on a very small light that's at the top of the radio control tower for the bridge itself. So it zoomed. We got it to pinpoint in there, and then I was able to preset the zoom to be able to go into a 200 times zoom and then switch over to a thermal. So I do like this feature, and I think it's going to be extremely useful. You know, same thing kind of going into the next application, which is track. Now, I think this is also a video, if I'm not mistaken, Des. This is something that I did see on DJI's release for the M300 series, and this is going to be something massive, especially for law enforcement. You know, anybody that's working in public safety at all. I really like this feature. So if we can just go ahead and go and talk about this one as well.
Francisco, feel free to dive right in.
Sorry. So yeah. So this is the new Smart Track feature. So something that's not quite as obvious. So you can see here when the laser rangefinder is enabled, you can get the GPS coordinates of the item that is tracking, right? And in the user interface on the map, you can see where that object is, and it's automatically focusing as well, because we know the distance. The application and the drone will automatically know how far away it is, and it can stay in focus. And if you wanted to, you can zoom in as well, but in general, it will try to remain at that zoom level that you've pre-selected.
And if you have something like the Enterprise Flight Hub series, you know, are you able to actually live stream the GPS coordinates of the moving object? Let's say, you know, like this car that's driving away from you. Are they able to live stream that and be able to show the exact coordinates?
Yep, that's right. So this is still something that's under development, but that's something that we are looking to implement.
Definitely sounds like on the public safety sector, it's going to be very, very helpful.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. So that's something that's going to be a really big a game changer for them. You know, and going into the next one, which is going to be about location sharing. Can you go ahead and go a little bit in depth on the location sharing?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, this is still under development. But as of right now, you could share the GPS locations let's say as an example, right? So because we know when you're using the laser rangefinder, you could share that out to the team. But eventually, like once FlightHub does support this, you could share it in real time, just like you see here in this user interface, where everyone that's connected to FlightHub, they can see in real time where this where the drone would be pointing the camera at, or where your pinpoint would be.
And do you guys have a time frame on when that's going to start being implemented into FlightHub?
I don't, but if you guys want, I can get a time frame for you.
Sure, that'd be great. Absolutely. So the next thing I want to kind of dive into here, which is going to be the smart inspection itself. Now, I mentioned in the previous webinar that the new Waypoint 2.0 system has over 65,000 different waypoints that you can drop, which is going to be massive. I mean, I know a big complaint I would get from people is that the M600 was limited to 99 waypoints at one point. So, you know, working with those specialty cameras and the heavier payload systems that they would need to use, you know, they'd run out. So I like the fact that this has so many built into them that it's essentially an endless amount of waypoints that you can drop on here. But then we're also going to go into the live recording and the AI spot check itself. So Des, we can go ahead and go over to the next slide. All right. So let's talk about Waypoint 2.0. Can you give me the rundown of, you know, not only what was the point of adding more waypoints on here, obviously to be able to cover a larger area, but, you know, what are some of the real benefits of having Waypoint 2.0 here?
Right. So yeah, like you mentioned, the waypoint system has been improved significantly. So in the past, we only allowed up to 99 waypoints. And the reason for that was the flight controller. That was the limitation of the flight controller, right? So by improving our flight controller, now we allow for more waypoints. And this allows for more customability, right? So when you're flying your drone, you can determine where the drone is, where the payload is. And this also helps for the AI inspection that we have. So, you know, this is something that we heard a lot of users complain about, especially like developers. There was a limitation, right? So we're hoping that this would address a lot of their issues.
Okay, and then there it also talks about that it's supporting multiple payloads. Yeah, can you touch on that? So if I'm running two camera systems on here at the same time, am I able to work with the Waypoint 2.0 systems?
Yes, that's right. So if you're using two cameras, you can have them pointing at separate things, if you wanted to, and you know this would be recorded in the flight mission. So we'll see. I mean, this is something that we kept hearing that people wanted. So you know now we're offering this as well.
And what's the maximum multi-payload? How many payloads can you support at one?
I believe it's 3. I'll double check. I haven't finished the testing on the triple mission payload. But yeah, is that something that I'm guessing that's something that our users want? I don't know off the top of my head.
Just a question that we got.
Okay.
No problem. And then I see here that it also talks about supporting third-party payload systems, and we're going to cover that when we get to the SDK section, but I'm glad that that's actually built in with the Waypoint 2.0 system. You know, but the next thing you mentioned was the AI systems that's built into this drone, and going into the actual live mission recording. You know, I do like those features, and I like the fact that the AI is used on the system to not only just timestamp, but also geotag. You know, so can you go ahead and go a little bit in depth on the live mission recording?
Right. So the way that live mission recording works is it's like as it kind of sounds, it's a live mission, right? So as you're flying, you can set waypoints for the drone, and you can also set where the gimbal would be taking a picture at, right? So in this case, like the gimbal is just facing straight forward, but if you wanted to, you could face in any direction. And this would be recorded as well. So, you know, I think the next step after this that we're going to talk about is the AI inspection. So after you do that, you can annotate images, but in general, this would be saved under a mission file, which if you wanted to, you could export it to other drones. And the main reason for this is to kind of So let's say in this case, we're looking at this object right here, right? This tower. You
Right.
can record it one time, and then you could do it again over and over, as many times as you needed to get the exact same images. That would be the goal, to get the same type of images to then compare to see if there's an issue.
Yeah, and I think that's really good for public safety as well, right? I mean, we're looking at, from an inspection point of view, this is something that's going to be very useful for them as well. But for public safety, I think that's going to be a great feature to have. Especially if you're constantly doing surveillance on one area, you're trying to get different points of views on the area, trying to scout out wherever it is that you might be sending officers, or you might be doing just a general overview. I like that feature, and something that I'm sure hasn't really been thought over too much implementing with, but would also be over crowd control, right? Having a large group of area, being able to scout the different areas that you're flying in, being able to do the live mission recording, being able to actually snap different photos to just kind of, watch over whatever's happening, whatever event is there, anything like that.
Yep, situational awareness.
100%. There's the proper term.
I'm here for you, Sam.
So, another thing I like, before we go, AI spot check, that's exactly what I want to talk about. So let's go ahead and let's go a little bit more in depth on the AI spot check. Do we have a video on that, Desiree?
Oh, you know it.
So
Tell us what we're
Francisco, can you
seeing.
just kind of talk us through what's happening?
Yeah, so after you've done the live mission and you've selected where the drone would be taking a picture, you can go and edit the pictures to annotate. So here we have the user annotating and telling the drone, okay, I want you next time to look at this section. This is what's important to me, right? So it's going to take into account the same zoom factor as well that you want for that picture. So next time you'll see the drone, it goes to fly. As it's going through the mission, you'll see that it'll look for that object using computer vision to make sure that it's gotten the same exact image. And actually, what I found is that most of the time, this was actually better than the live user. So like I would try to take a picture of this object, and then when I had it do it automatically, the picture came out better. So it does a pretty good job.
AI, gotta love it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I like the fact that it's starting to be integrated. I know that the T16s were utilizing AI, so I really like the fact that it's starting to move over into the Matrice series as well. And something that's great too is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, these are also going to be timestamped and geotagged, so that you can always come back and reference them at a later date if you wanted to as well.
Yep, exactly. So you can know where the drone was and where your images are as well.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's definitely something to keep in mind. So moving over to the next slide, I want to talk about the high-res grid photo section. So give us a little bit in depth on this. I do see that we're using the wide camera. We have it in here at a zoom. Give us a breakdown on what's happening here.
Yep. So here the user will select the super high-res grid photo, and here they've selected that like rectangle area, and they have the 10 times optical zoom on the side. So the more you zoom in, the more little squares you'll see, which means that the more pictures that you're going to take. So do keep in mind that you have optical, you're utilizing the 20 megapixels until 23 times zoom. So if you go any more than that, it's going to be digital.
Right.
But anyway, I'm sure you've seen like the camera quality is very, very good. And this is actually this is the main feedback that we received, especially from inspection companies, is that they're really happy with the higher megapixel size compared to like the Z30, with the puny 2 megapixel. So this allows you to fly at a safer distance while still getting a really good image.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, especially when it comes down to any kind of inspection, whether that be, doing a live wire inspection like this, or even something like a solar panel, which I know is massive for the drone industry. Having that camera being able to do a much better, cleaner photo for you with higher megapixels, definitely be able to get better feedback and be able to process better data as well.
And
it just
organized.
I'm sorry?
I was just going to say, and it keeps it organized by putting everything into that subfolder so that when it is time to go back and analyze that flight mission, everything is nice, clear, concise for you in a subfolder.
Yeah. And, you know, the main thing to remember as well is, you know, just keep in mind that this is something that you're able to not only expedite the process for what it is that you're looking for any of the anomalies, but it's also easy to use, right? So that's something that just, it saves you time, it will save you money in the long run, and it's something that just kind of speeds up the whole process for you on your normal inspections that you're running. Now I want to talk about the flight display, the primary flight display that we have here. You know, that's a really cool function. It's something that's brand new from DJI. So talk about that a little bit. You know, explain to me why this was integrated and how is this like a game changer for the M300 series?
Right. So so this we took some notes from the aviation industry. So this looks, if this looks familiar, it's because this is a similar UI to a real manned aircraft, right? So here we have a couple of things. We have the speed on the left side. So this is in meters per second, but you can have it in miles per hour if you select imperial units. And on the right, we have the obstacle avoidance for the top and the bottom, right? So here you can see that it detects an object at 9.6 meters above it, and then 14 meters below is the water, right? So in the middle, you'll see a vector speed. So it tells you the direction of the drone that the pilot is flying in, and also the magnitude. So if he's pushing more on the joystick, for example, it'll display a larger line to notify you that, hey, like I'm going in this direction much faster, right? So we try to make this as easy to use as possible by having like this clean user interface. And you can see here, this is an example of the customizable obstacle avoidance sensors, right? So usually, like if you're flying this close to two pillars, you know, it looks like you might hit something, but if you're looking at the UI on the bottom, you'll see that you're still within that warning zone at the braking distance, right? So yeah, this is a large improvement. And also another thing to note is at the bottom left, you'll see WS. This was something that a lot of our users wanted to know, is the wind speed. So using the advanced flight controller inside, we can output the wind speed that the drone is experiencing at that time.
Okay. And I think to just bundle that up, it's really taking all the things that we wanted to know about our flight and putting it on the screen right in front of us, allowing us to decrease our stress level and anxiety about flying and fly a little bit more with confidence and accuracy. So all of those tools kind of work together to give us this type of end result.
Yeah, and I would like to know that this is on the FPV camera view. So, you know, this is not impede on your H20T or Z30. This is something that you would have to you would have to check and go into, so that, you know, because a lot of people thought that this was like an overlay for the H20T.
Yeah, and that's good to keep in mind too, especially using a dual remote controller setup. You know, you can have the main person flying the drone have the situational awareness, while the other person really focuses on getting the shot done. Excuse me. All right, so Des, I think we have a Q&A section next. So have any questions come up on the software?
Yes, we have a couple of questions, some even going a little bit further back, but I'm going to trickle them all in. Talking about obstacle avoidance, how does this do with wires and power lines? Bobby's asking.
Right. So similar to other visual obstacle avoidance systems, you know, if the power line it has to be a certain thickness, right? Mm-hmm. If it's too small and too thin, like the camera's not going to pick it up, you know. So you do have that limitation. That you should still keep an eye on the drone if you're going to be flying around those areas.
Okay, safety first. So regarding tracking, if you encounter an obstacle, can it continue to fly around that obstacle to the target?
No. So we had something in the past called APAS, right, where the drone would fly around something else. This model, we didn't think that people would want that, so it's not something that's been implemented.
Okay. Is it possible to change the GPS from latitude to longitude? Is this something that's currently capable as it stands?
Changing the GPS
to USNG.
Maybe you have to.
Sure, Benedict here. Not sure, Benedict. You commented in this Q&A. If you can actually ping back in for us and clarify so that Francisco can properly answer your question, it would be greatly appreciated. We'll come back to that question. And okay, sorry, just clearing these out as I go. So in some of these images that we're seeing, in some of the videos that we're playing, you're actually seeing, and Haas is asking, it appears that the props are being picked up in the video and pictures that are being taken. Is this occurring? Like, is that what we're actually, are we seeing what we think we're seeing? And is that an issue with bottom mounted props?
So I think they're referring to the video that we just saw, which is the primary flight display. So if you see on the drone right now, you'll see a camera near the top. That's what we were looking at, which is why you were seeing the props. But if you're looking at them, at it through the main gimbal, which is on the bottom, you're usually going to be pointing down. So you're not going to be in the props.
Yeah, and just keep in mind too, if you're going to be doing like any kind of a bridge inspection or anything like that, you know, you'd be utilizing the top mount on the M300 series. You wouldn't be having it underneath the drone pointing straight up. Then yeah, you're going to have prop wash in the video and in the photos. And you know, like Francisco said, most of these videos we're seeing, it's all going to be from an FPV point of view. Looking back at, you know, like the AI video that we watched, there's no prop wash in them or anything like that. So whenever you're seeing the props or anything like that in the actual videos that are being shown, it's from the FPV point of view.
It's us saying something that a lot of people don't say, so I'm glad we clarified. Regarding the RTK, do you have to use a ground station?
Ground station. So you don't have to use the DRTK2. You can. You could also, because we have access to NTRIP, right? You can use a base station, a known base station, as your reference point.
All right. And that clears up our current Q&As.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, so let's go into the main thing that everybody's been asking me about, which is going to be the SDK systems themselves. Now, this is broken down into 3 different divisions. Let's cover payload SDK. Break that down for us. Tell us exactly what that's going to be used for. What use cases are already on the market. You know, right off the top of my head, I can already think of something like MicaSense and other systems that are available through this.
Right. So the payload SDK is something that we've opened up to developers. So like you mentioned, MicaSense is one of them. We also have slant range, right? So these 2 provide multispectral cameras, right? So we've opened up the reason why we have payload SDK is because DJI, we don't have the resources to do everything, right? So if there's something that's very niche, you can have a developer provide a solution for this. So the great thing about the payload SDK is, you know, in the past we had mobile SDK, and then we had onboard SDK, but now with the payload SDK, a developer could develop a full end-to-end solution, right? You can have the application providing the data that they need, and then their hardware providing the sensors to gather the data, right? So through the payload SDK, we're hoping that third-party developers can help with those, maybe the niche cases that, you know, DJI would not put resources into.
Right.
So we did launch the DJI export. I believe that was just last year in 2019, and this is to accelerate the development process. So in the past, the developer would have to develop, you know, the sensor and then put it onto a gimbal, maybe 1-axis, 2-axis gimbal. But now we've provided a 3-axis gimbal, which is the DJI export, to help accelerate this issue.
Yeah, that's an exciting new product because we've had a lot of interest in that, and I'd really like to go a little bit more in on what the SDKs can actually also do for us. You know, the next one I believe we have is the mobile SDK system. So break that down for us. And before we actually go into this, can you tell me a little bit about how do you actually develop something for the SDK system? You know, what are the steps to be able to actually get access to developing something for the SDK?
Right. So for developing through the mobile SDK, so first of all, you have to choose your operating system, right? Whether it's iOS or Android. That's the first thing. you can create an account through our developer portal. And then from there, let's just say I just select iOS, then you can start the coding process.
Right.
So something that we've been working on is the STK library, and this is to help speed up or accelerate the development process as well. So, you know, you don't have to create all the tiny little widgets anymore like you did in the past. This is something that we released, I think now 2 years ago. So now you can have an app ready to go, at least a test app ready to go much sooner than in the past. You know, so again, this is more on the developer side, but that's how you get started. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. You know, and so going on to the next one, I want to talk about the onboard SDK. So let's go into that. You know, I see here that the UAV health management system is part of the onboard SDK. We have the sensors, you know, so obviously all these items are working together. What really prompted you guys to start implementing this into the M300 series?
Right. So real quick, a bit of history for onboard SDK.
Sure.
So the reason that onboard SDK was developed was because a few years ago, our users required higher computing power, and the only way at the time, you know, we couldn't put something like this on our drone. So this is really developed if you need some stronger computing power, you can put a mini computer essentially, which is what the Manifold 2 is, on the drone, right? So what this can do is it can provide more, let's say I was looking to analyze thermal images. I could do this in real time through the onboard SDK instead of in post, right? So again, this is for, you know, more computing power in general. And in the past, you know, it says here we have 6-directional sensing and positioning. So in the past, we also had the onboard SDK use the obstacle avoidance to kind of, this is before we had obstacle avoidance on board on the drone.
Right.
But yeah, so, you know, essentially it's just more computing power to help you possibly do real-time analysis. And, you know, the possibilities are somewhat endless. So I don't want to talk any more into this because I feel like we would have to get one of our onboard SDK developers involved.
We'd have to go really technical with it. Yeah, but I get the general sense of what we're covering here. And, you know, I really like the fact that, you know, the amount of computing power that the M300 has is what's able to actually utilize a lot of what it's receiving, a lot of the camera sensors running at the same time, a lot of the vision sensors running, really all the data that's going through this drone at once, and still being able to maintain a very solid flight time. You know, that's massive for this drone. So kind of going forward, I want to open it up to any questions that we might have on the SDK series itself. Des, have any questions come through on that?
Actually, this is the one topic I expected a little bit more chime in. It seems that we've given enough knowledge and background. We don't have any questions on SDK right now.
Perfect. So then let's go ahead and let's dive into the Enterprise Shield section. Now, this is something that I think a lot of our clients, and I think a lot of people in general, don't really understand what Enterprise Shield is, and just how valuable of a service it could be for them. You know, there's 2 different versions. You know, we have the basic and we have the plus, you know, and, you know, kind of walk us through what is Enterprise Shield, how is it beneficial for you, you know, why should you utilize it with these drones?
Right. So we launched Enterprise Shield a few years ago, but this is something that would be great for our users to, if you wanted to have comprehensive coverage. We do offer, you know, water damage coverage, which is something that in the past, like, you know, if your drone fell in the water, unless you got the drone back, you know, there's nothing we could do. So just for that reason alone, I would definitely recommend Enterprise Shield. But also there's the rapid delivery, right? Like sometimes you need, for these operations, maybe you just have a few drones in your fleet, and the rapid delivery allows the user to get something next day air probably, or 2-day shipping. So I think that on its own as well is very useful, very valuable.
Absolutely. You know, and something I want to touch base on as well is, you know, there's 2 different versions, right? We have basic, we have plus. The question I always get is, well, what's the difference between them? Why would I go with one over the other? So basic, and this is to kind of to bring it back to the people that are watching right now. If you have a business, you have a company, and you have, like, let's say, a fleet of drones. Enterprise Shield Basic, what it does is within about 15 to 20 business days from DJI, they'd get the repair done, they'd ship you the drone back, and you'd have your unit back. Now, if you're somebody that has to have their drone continually, right? Your company depends on it, your department depends on it, it's a life or death situation every day with these drones for you. That's where the Enterprise Shield Plus comes into play. Right, DJI will fix it within 24 to 48 hours. They expedite the shipment for you. I believe it's an overnight shipment. Or you can always opt in for just getting the replacement unit, which they would overnight a replacement unit to you. So that's something really important to remember when we're looking at the Enterprise Shield section. There are two different versions. The M300 Combo Series will come in two different versions of Enterprise Shield available to them. So whenever you're talking to your representative, or if you're talking to one of us over here, just make sure you know which version you're going for that best suits your business.
And are all versions, Francisco, question for you, is Shield, does that work in Latin America? Nicholas is asking.
You know what, let me get back to you on that. I don't know off the top of my head for Latin America.
Thank you, we'll get that answer for you, Nicholas.
All right, and Des, if you want to go to the maintenance service slide, since we're already kind of in the Q&A section right now.
Which slide, Sam?
The next one.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the maintenance service that you see here. Can you talk about this, Francisco, a little bit? The basic, the standard, the premium. Is this only specifically going to be for the Matrice 300 series? Is it something that's also going to be available for other of the enterprise lines? Let us know a little bit about this.
Yeah, so right now, I think in general, so this will be available for the M300 series. We're looking to expand this for other drones.
Okay.
But at launch, this will definitely support the M300 series. And there, this kind of follows our maintenance guide that we released with the M300 as well, where every 6 months, we recommend the user send in their drone for maintenance. So, we have a basic, standard, and premium plan, and they cover different things. The base, I don't remember exactly which one it is, but some of them have like if you need to calibrate your sensors, that's something that we can do under the basic plan, for example, right? And then we have more comprehensive plans where we will, we'll switch out certain components for the maintenance.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's like a full tune-up for your drone pretty much, right? Same as you would do with your car, taking in for its basic inspection and its basic services that you have. The same thing for a drone. Now, it's obviously not going to be as frequent or repetitive, but I do see here, I mean, the 200-hour, 400-hour, and 600-hour timelines. I like the fact that, DJI is really expecting this drone to be a workhorse, because what we used to see in the past was, the M200s were rated for 200 hours of flight time within a year. Now we're seeing the M300 series being rated that within 6 months. So this is definitely something that's going to not only take over the industry, but going to become the new standard. And it's going to be used heavily, especially now with all of the new features and specs that are fully built into it. So I really like that that's featured there. And for all the people that are watching, we're going to get you the information on the basic, standard, and platinum plans that are available, what the actual breakdown is. I'll work with Francisco to get you that information so we can fully give you a full feedback on what's included with every single service plan and even some of the price points that are available there. So with that, let's go ahead and just open up the discussion. Des, are there any other questions that might have trickled in or something that you see being very repetitive?
Yeah, I have a few. You guys bear with us. I know we're definitely past our 1 hour mark, but we're in our home run and we still have a full audience. So I want to make sure we answer all of your questions. I'm taking it all the way back up to the top, and then we'll just kind of work our way through. So guys, if you have any more questions, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A box right now. It doesn't matter which topic it was on. We will try to get you an answer right now. Some of this, again, may be redundant, but let's just kind of close out with a recap on some of these. So multispectral. let's talk about multispectral, what that looks like now and what that looks like in the future for the M300 series.
Gotcha. So for the M300 series, since it does support the payload SDK options, slant range and mica sense, right? They offer multispectral cameras. So that's something that you would be able to utilize with the M300 series.
And integrate, great. Yeah. Roberto is asking, regarding the triple video channel, what is the range? Same range. So
what is it, 9.3 miles?
9.3 miles, yeah.
Yeah, so lots of numbers in my head.
Perfect. What Jerome is asking, what flight planning software does the M300 use as it stands?
As it stands, it's using the DJI Pilot application. There will be GS Pro support at a later date. That is something that is being developed.
Okay, so not right now, because the second part of Jerome's question was, what about the GS Pro? So not right now, but in the future, it should be supported by that as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
And just real quick too, before we go over to the next question, you know, Francisco, if you can talk about the H20 T series real quick. I know DJI just came out with their version of what would be kind of like a FLIR tools.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that and how you're able to actually pull some of the data from the H20T and go through, review it, analyze it, you know, make corrections to it, and what that software is called?
Yeah, so just like you mentioned, we did release a software that's similar to FLIR tools. You could do very similar things that you know you would do in the past with FLIR tools, like measure different points, compare them, annotate things. So it's very similar in that respect. And if you want, you could actually download this. It's under the downloads page for the H20 T series. Mm-hmm. So you could also, you know, if you're curious, you could take a look there as well.
Perfect.
Perfect. All right. Dean is asking, are there any KLV metadata outputs for the gimbal position?
KLV. So I think this is with AI, probably the live mission recording.
Okay.
You know what? Let me get back to you on this one.
And guys, we will work on actually taking all the Q&A questions that have been asked and actually formalizing the answers as a typed response. And we plan to send that out. So give us about 24 hours post webinar for us to get this recording back out to you, to get a nice detailed downloadable of all the Q&A questions that were discussed. And if any of the questions were not answered here today, we're actually going to be having a follow-up webinar that we'll talk about here in a moment. But let me just wrap up on some of these questions. Okay, Roberto is asking, is DJI considering LiDAR at any point for the M300 series?
LiDAR, so I believe that would be through Payload SDK.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Now, we were talking about maintenance, we're talking about protection and water protection. What about saltwater damage? You know, oil rigs out in the ocean, they're gonna be exposed to these different elements. Is that covered?
Let me get back to you on that question as well. That's very
Enterprise Shield. Okay, great. All right. Actually, that does it for all of our Q&As as it stands.
Perfect. Well, all right, guys, thank you for tuning in today to our webinar. Francisco, thank you for being on here with us today and taking some time out from your busy schedule to actually go over the M300 series with us a little bit more in depth. Again, guys, we're going to actually go through, we're going to look at more of the questions. We're going to have an answer for you. Like Desiree said, we're going to be sending a follow-up email with the answers and also a recording. And we're also going to be including our first webinar and the YouTube video that we shot with the M300 series showing the inspection that was done on the bridge. Again, if you have any questions, any concerns, you know, my contact information is up there on the screen. You also have Francisco's contact information. He's based out of California. So, you know, keep in mind, he's 3 hours behind us, but he's also available. If you have any questions, any concerns, anything like that, you know, feel free to reach out to us. Francisco, again, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate having you on here today.
And last but not least, we will be doing one more webinar to close out this series about all things related to Tech Talk with the M300, as well as the H20 series. Our hope is that there's going to be some new developments that come out, some new trial and errors that have happened, and maybe we'll even have a few case studies that are new and improved that we can go over with you. So as always, it's been a pleasure. That next meeting will be June 10th. We will send out additional details with time, date, and registration links. Thank you, everybody. We hope that you stay safe. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.